She woke up every morning to the same routine. The alarm rang at 6, and she would get out of bed without hesitation. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, and dressed in the outfit her family had chosen for her day at work she did not think about. Her choices because there had always been a plan for her life, and she had learned long ago that resisting it only caused friction. Her breakfast was quiet. Her parents often sat with her at the table, but conversation was limited to instructions or reminders about how she should behave at school or in her social life. The words were polite but firm. She listened and nodded and never questioned, because questioning had always brought disappointment. She worked in a small office with people. She knew only superficially they greeted her with smiles and small talk, but she returned politeness with the same distance. She did her tasks well and efficiently, but she never stayed late or offered extra effort outside her duties. She had learned that doing more than required often invited comments or criticism from family or coworkers. On her way to work, she looked at the streets passing by, noticed the shops and cafes bustling with people. She sometimes wondered what it would be like to just walk into one of the cafes, sit down, and talk to a stranger, or read a book without worrying about what her family would think. But she quickly pushed the thought away. Her life had boundaries that were not meant to be crossed at work. She organized papers, answered emails, and handled phone calls. All of it went smoothly. Her colleagues saw her as competent but distant, never joined their after-work gatherings or shared personal stories. She kept her feelings contained inside a careful shell. During lunch, she often ate alone. She would sit by the window watching people pass by, couples laughing, the friends sharing stories, the children playing in the park. She felt a faint pang in her chest, sometimes as if she were missing something she could not name, but she told herself it was just a fleeting thought, and she returned to her sandwich or salad. Her family expected her to be a certain way. They wanted her to study hard, get a good job, marry well, and maintain the family's reputation. She understood their concerns and followed their directions without complaint. But deep down, she felt a quiet emptiness. She had dreams and desires that she never voiced, because they were not considered practical or important. Evenings were the hardest. She would return home and hear her parents discuss plans for her future. Their voices were calm, but carried an underlying pressure. She nodded and agreed when asked about her decisions. She did not want to disappoint them, but a small part of her wondered if life could be different sometimes. She would go to her room and sit by the window, watching the sky turn colors as the sun set. She would let her mind wander for a few minutes, thinking about what it might be like to have friends who understood her, or a life that felt truly hers. But the moment passed quickly, and she buried those thoughts under her responsibilities. She had one friend from her childhood who she met occasionally. They would share stories and laugh for a short time, but even with her friend, she held back parts of herself. She did not trust anyone completely, because she had been taught that vulnerability could lead to trouble. Her weekends were planned as well. She attended family gatherings, events with relatives, or classes that were supposed to improve her skills. She followed the schedule without complaint, but she noticed how different it was from other people she saw in magazines or on the streets. They seemed free to do what they wanted, and she envied that freedom in secret. She had never been in love, or even considered it seriously. Love was something distant and abstract, something that might happen if everything else in life was perfect, but perfection was always expected and never guaranteed. Her parents had made sure of that by emphasizing responsibilities before feelings. And quiet nights, she would read a book or watch something on her small television, but she felt little excitement. She was learning facts but not discovering joy. She felt herself growing colder toward the world around her, because there was no room for emotional spontaneity in her structured life. She remembered a time when she had wanted to paint. Her hands had been eager to create colors and shapes, but her parents told her it was a waste of time and she should focus on more important studies. She had obeyed and never picked up a brush again. That memory stayed with her as a reminder that following her own heart was dangerous work. Continued smoothly, and life went on with predictable patterns. She met the expectations set before her without deviation. She followed every instruction without questioning, and she kept her dreams hidden deep inside. Her apartment was neat and orderly. Each item had its place, and she found comfort in the organization, but the emptiness remained. The walls were clean, the furniture in order, but the feeling that something vital was missing. lingered quietly, she had learned to smile politely to neighbors. When they passed by but never lingered in conversation, she kept people at a distance because intimacy was uncomfortable and often. Discouraged by her upbringing, she had grown skilled at maintaining appearances while hiding the real emotions within. At night, she would stare at the ceiling, thinking about the life she was living and the life she might have wanted. She felt a cold tension in her chest, as if something inside her was frozen in place. Her heart was cautious and guarded, and she did not know how to change it. Despite the coldness that had settled in her heart, she remained observant. She noticed small acts of kindness in the world around her, a stranger helping someone carry groceries, a neighbor chatting warmly with a child, a worker offering a smile without expectation. She watched these moments carefully and felt a mixture of longing and confusion. She wondered if it was possible to be different, to allow warmth and emotion to guide her life without disappointing those she loved. She did not know how to take that step, and she feared the consequences of trying, and so her days continued the same. A life measured by rules and expectations. She was competent, polite, and dutiful, but there was a hidden world inside her, a place where hope and curiosity quietly waited for an opportunity to awaken. She did not know that soon that quiet place would begin to stir and change the way she saw herself and the world around her. She arrived at work one morning and noticed a new face at the reception desk. The person smiled warmly and greeted everyone without hesitation. They seemed different from the usual crowd, calm but lively at the same time. She observed quietly from her desk, wondering why such a simple gesture felt unusual. The new colleague was assigned to help with office organization and coordinating tasks. She saw them moving around with purpose, but also stopping to talk to people. They asked questions with genuine interest and listened carefully too. The answers she found herself watching from a distance, feeling a curious warmth she had not felt in a long time. At first she tried to ignore the feeling. She told herself that new people were always exciting for a few days, and then the novelty wore off. She focused on her work as usual, but she noticed small things. She laughed quietly when she saw the new colleague helping a coworker find a misplaced file, or patiently explaining a task during lunch. She sat at her usual spot by the window. She noticed that the new colleague sat alone at a table nearby and started to read a book. She wondered if they were lonely or simply enjoyed their own company. She felt a strange desire to speak to them, but immediately dismissed the thought. Her life had rules, and reaching out to strangers was not part of the plan. Over the next few days, she saw more small gestures. The new colleague would leave notes of encouragement on the desks of others, or bring small treats for the team. They did not do it for praise or recognition, and she realized that no one had done anything like this at her office before. It made her heart feel lighter in a way she could not explain. One afternoon, the new colleague accidentally knocked over a stack of papers. She quickly moved to help, picking up the sheets and organizing them carefully. The calm and gentle way they worked together with others made her feel comfortable in a strange way. She found herself smiling quietly at the scene and hoping the moment would not end too soon. She started noticing small details she had ignored before. The way the new colleague listened intently when someone spoke, the way they moved around the office with care and consideration, and the warmth in their eyes. She realized she had spent so many years observing the world through a guarded lens that simple kindness now seemed extraordinary. One day they approached her desk to ask a question about a task. She answered politely as usual, but noticed that the person waited for her opinion and genuinely seemed interested in what she thought. She felt a moment of surprise followed by a curious warmth. She had never felt anyone listen to her like this before. She found herself thinking about the new colleague during breaks. Sometimes she wondered what they liked to do outside work or what they thought about ordinary things. The thoughts made her heart beat a little faster, but she did not act on them. She was still cautious and careful not to let her feelings show her. Coworkers began to notice a subtle change in her behavior. She smiled more often and seemed less distant. Some of them commented on it quietly, but she just nodded. She did not explain because she herself did not fully understand the shift happening. Inside her, she began to watch how the new colleague treated the world around them. The kindness extended beyond the office. They helped a street vendor carry boxes one morning and smiled at children playing nearby. Without expecting anything in return, they made the people around them feel seen. She felt a deep admiration, but also a tiny pang of longing. She wanted to experience such freedom and warmth herself. She began experimenting quietly. She started to smile more at strangers in the office and give small gestures of help. She noticed that even tiny acts could make others happy, and that it brought a subtle glow to her own heart. She felt cautious, but a small spark of something new had begun to light inside her. One evening, she accidentally dropped a folder while leaving work. The new colleague noticed immediately and ran to help. She felt a sudden rush of relief as they handed her the papers with a kind smile. She realized she had been holding her breath without noticing, and now she could breathe easier than she had in years. They began talking briefly about work and slowly about other things. They shared small stories from their childhood or a favorite book. They laughed quietly, and she realized that conversation could feel natural, without fear or expectation. She started to look forward to these moments, and sometimes felt a quiet excitement on the days she knew they would happen. Her evenings at home began to feel different. She reflected on the encounters at work and felt a warmth she had not experienced before. She thought about her guarded life and wondered if it was possible to slowly let someone in. She felt cautious, but also curious about the possibility of connection. The more she observed and interacted with the new colleague, the more she noticed her own heart responding. She felt excitement, curiosity, and a desire to understand herself better. She began to see that life might not need to be so rigid, and that small acts of kindness could open doors she had kept closed for too long. She began keeping a small journal in which she wrote brief thoughts about the day. She did not share it with anyone, but it helped her process the new feelings. She noticed patterns in her reactions and slowly understood that her coldness had been a protective layer. She began thinking that perhaps she could choose to lower it at home. She thought about moments of her past when she had felt small flashes of joy and warmth, but had quickly pushed them aside. She realized that these moments were not mistakes or distractions. They were signals of what she wanted from life, and she felt a quiet determination to pay attention to them. She started taking small steps outside the office as well. She smiled at neighbors she met on the street and said brief, polite words. She noticed how people responded differently when she allowed herself to show a little warmth. She began to feel a connection to the world around her that had seemed distant before. She thought about how unusual it felt to experience these feelings and realized that fear had kept her from them for so long. She understood that change could be slow and that she did not need to rush. She just needed to be aware and allow herself to respond to moments of kindness and warmth. Her dreams at night began to include small scenarios where she interacted freely with people and expressed herself without fear or judgment. She woke up feeling lighter and more curious. She looked forward to work because it now offered opportunities for connection instead of just duty. She noticed that her relationships with other coworkers improved. She became more patient and understanding and started helping others without being asked. She found that giving and receiving kindness was a two-way experience that brought quiet satisfactions and joy. The new colleague remained a gentle guide without knowing it. They did not pressure or insist. They simply existed in the world with warmth and authenticity, which inspired her to reflect on her own life and choices. She began to see that human connection could be simple yet profound. If approached with sincerity, she spent weekends exploring small activities she had avoided before. She visited parks, walked through streets observing people, and sometimes stopped to engage briefly with strangers. She noticed small smiles and polite gestures that seemed ordinary, but now felt meaningful. She started thinking about possibilities she had never considered. She wondered if it was possible to open her heart slowly without losing control. She realized that vulnerability did not have to be dangerous, and that connection could coexist with responsibility. Over time, she began to feel a quiet excitement about life. She looked forward to new experiences and interactions. She noticed that her heart responded to simple gestures of understanding and kindness, and that her world no longer felt as cold and distant as it had before. She recognized that the shift within her was gradual but real. She felt courage building slowly and a sense of hope that she could experience warmth without fear. She understood that the path ahead would not be simple, but it could be filled with moments that made life meaningful. and engaging, she woke up one morning with a sense of unease that she could not explain. She felt a tension in her chest that made her movements slow and deliberate. At breakfast, she noticed her parents speaking in their usual calm tones, but she realized she was not fully listening. Her thoughts drifted to the new colleague and the warmth that had begun to grow inside her. She felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. In the way to work, she watched the streets and the people passing by. She noticed how different their lives seemed from hers. They walked quickly, laughed freely, and seemed unburdened by invisible rules. She wondered if they felt emotions more fully than she did, if their hearts were open to experiences she had always avoided. At work, she performed her tasks efficiently as usual, but her mind wandered. She replayed moments of kindness and small interactions from previous days. She realized she had been craving these connections without consciously acknowledging it. She felt a pang of guilt for having ignored such feelings for so long. During a short break, she saw the new colleague helping another coworker organize files. She felt a sudden urge to join them, but hesitated. She remembered the years of caution and the lessons she had learned about keeping a guarded heart. She felt torn between the desire to connect and the fear of being vulnerable later. That day, she received an unexpected message from the new colleague, asking if she would like to help with a small project. She paused before responding. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she thought about the implications. She knew that accepting would require more openness and engagement than she had allowed herself in years. She took a deep breath and agreed. The project brought them together for long hours of discussion and collaboration. They shared ideas and opinions in ways that felt comfortable and natural. She felt her walls begin to crack slowly as she realized that working closely did not have to be frightening. The new colleague listened attentively to her thoughts and offered support without judgment. During these interactions, she noticed her own reactions. She felt warmth spreading through her chest and a softening of the careful distance she had always maintained. She laughed more easily and felt excitement when new challenges arose. She realized that engagement could be both safe and rewarding. One afternoon, a small setback occurred in the project. A misunderstanding led to a minor mistake, and she felt the familiar tension rise. She expected her old reflex to appear to control everything and suppress emotions. But instead, she noticed a strange sense of calm. The new colleague reassured her gently and helped find a solution without blame. She realized that mistakes did not have to provoke fear or punishment. After the incident, she reflected on her reactions. She had always believed that showing emotions could lead to disappointment or failure. But now, she saw that vulnerability could also bring understanding and growth. She began to question the rigid rules she had followed for so long. Her evenings were filled with thoughts of the day's events. She wrote in her journal about moments that had stirred her heart and mind. She described her fears, her excitement, and the unusual feeling of being seen for who she truly was. She began to understand that her coldness had been protective, but that it also prevented her from experiencing real connection. She started noticing how others responded to small gestures she made without thinking. She helped a coworker with a personal problem, listened attentively to a colleague's frustration, and smiled genuinely at friendly greetings. She saw that kindness and attention could be returned, and that it created a sense of warmth she had never known. The weekend, she walked through the city, observing people in their routines. She saw families laughing, children playing, and strangers offering brief acts of courtesy to each other. She realized that life was full of small moments of connection that she had been blind to. Before, her heart felt lighter as she allowed herself to take notice. One evening, she remembered a past memory from school. When she had wanted to join a club but had been discouraged, she realized that fear and caution had kept her from many experiences. She felt a quiet determination to not let the same hesitation control her present. She understood that change required conscious effort and small steps. At work, she continued to collaborate with the new colleague. Their discussions deepened as they exchanged personal stories and reflected on their own lives. She began to feel a sense of trust that she had rarely felt with anyone else. She realized that opening up could bring connection without necessarily causing harm. She started to experiment with small emotional expressions. She allowed herself to smile more freely, laugh without restraint, and offer genuine compliments. She noticed how these actions affected both her and those around her. Positively, she felt a quiet satisfaction in expressing herself authentically. Her interactions with her family began to change subtly. She listened more attentively and spoke more openly. She realized that her parents were not enemies, but people with their own fears and expectations. She began to see that communication could bridge gaps if approached with honesty and care. She spent time reflecting on the difference between fear and caution. She realized that fear had kept her life rigid while caution allowed for thoughtful decision-making. She decided to let caution guide her choices instead of fear. She felt a small liberation in this distinction and understood that life could be navigated without constant rigidity. During lunch breaks, she started joining the new colleague and other co-workers at the cafeteria. She engaged in conversations that were not strictly work-related. She shared ideas, dreams, and small stories from her past. She noticed that the experience brought joy and a sense of belonging she had never felt before. She recognized that change was not sudden but cumulative. Each interaction, each decision to engage, emotionally added up to a subtle transformation. She felt a quiet pride in herself for daring to allow small openings in her guarded heart. She began to dream more vividly at night. Her dreams included scenarios where she expressed her feelings openly and connected with others in meaningful ways. She woke with a sense of purpose and excitement for the day ahead. She realized that imagination and reflection were tools for growth that she had neglected for years. Home, she experimented with small acts of self-care and creativity. She painted small sketches, wrote brief notes to herself, and allowed herself moments of quiet contemplation. She noticed that these practices brought balance and helped her integrate the new feelings into her daily life. She understood that her heart was slowly changing. She felt warmth, curiosity, and courage growing within her. She realized that life was not about perfection or control, but about engagement and presence. She felt ready to explore further and continue her journey toward openness and connection. She woke up with the first light of morning, feeling a quiet anticipation. She felt a change within herself that she could sense even in simple tasks. She dressed quickly and left the apartment with a subtle energy in her steps. On the way to work, she noticed the morning breeze and the sounds of the city. She felt more present than she had in years and allowed herself to enjoy small moments of observation at work. She greeted her coworkers warmly and smiled. Genuinely, she felt more relaxed in her interactions and noticed that others responded positively. Her careful distance had softened, and she could now engage without fear of being judged. She felt a growing sense of confidence that came from being authentic rather than cautious. The new colleague approached her with a stack of papers. They exchanged greetings and shared a brief laugh. She noticed that the comfort between them had grown. She could speak freely and listen openly without the old tension or apprehension. She realized that trust had begun to form and that it could support further openness. Worked together on a project that required creative thinking. She shared ideas she had once thought unimportant or impractical. Her thoughts were met with encouragement and thoughtful responses. She felt her confidence grow with each suggestion that was acknowledged and valued. During a break, she observed others working around them. She noticed small acts of kindness and started to participate herself. She offered to help a coworker with a challenging task and found satisfaction in their grateful response. She felt that engaging with others brought not only joy, but also a sense of purpose that her structured routines had. She began to reflect on her past choices and realized how much she had missed by holding herself back. She remembered dreams of travel, of hobbies, of friendships she had never pursued. She did not feel regret, but a determination to make different choices moving forward. She understood that it was never too late to engage with life more fully. One afternoon, she received a message asking if she wanted to join a small team outing. She hesitated for a moment and then agreed. She understood that stepping outside her comfort zone was necessary to experience the warmth she had begun to feel. She looked forward to the opportunity and felt a quiet thrill at the idea of spending time with others in an informal setting. At the outing, she found herself laughing and sharing stories. She observed how natural connection could feel when expectations were lowered and judgments were absent. She enjoyed the simple pleasure of being present with others and realized that her guarded demeanor had been a barrier to experiencing such moments. She noticed that her colleagues began to include her more in casual conversations. In small decisions, she felt a growing sense of belonging and started to contribute. Ideas not out of obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to. She discovered that engagement could be rewarding and fulfilling in ways she had never expected during the evenings. She reflected on the day's interactions. She wrote in her journal about moments that had felt meaningful and about the new awareness growing inside her. She noted feelings of warmth and curiosity and acknowledged the progress she had made in opening her heart to connection. She began small experiments in her personal life. She smiled more at neighbors she passed on the street and offered brief words of encouragement. She noticed how these gestures were received and felt a sense of connection to the world around her. She understood that the same principles of openness and kindness applied beyond her immediate circle. She thought about moments when she had once been afraid to speak up or share her feelings. She realized that vulnerability was not weakness, but a bridge to connection. She felt empowered to act on small impulses, to express care and engage meaningfully with others. Work. She observed the new colleagues supporting others in their tasks. She felt inspired to extend similar patience and encouragement. She practiced listening fully and offering thoughtful responses. She noticed that her actions had a positive impact not only on others, but also on her own sense of self. Her weekends were spent exploring interests she had long ignored. She attended workshops, visited parks, and engaged in creative pursuits. She allowed herself to experience curiosity and joy without judging the outcomes. She felt a deep satisfaction in these moments and recognized that they were vital to her growth. She began to notice a subtle shift in how her family perceived her. She spoke more openly about her thoughts and feelings and received responses that were kinder and more understanding. She realized that authenticity could transform relationships and that change within herself could influence the people around her. She reflected on the fear that had previously guided her life. She understood that fear had kept her trapped in routines and distant from others. She felt proud of herself for making conscious choices to act with openness and kindness. She recognized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward. Despite it, one day she noticed a small opportunity to mentor a newer coworker. She offered guidance and support in a gentle way. She observed the person respond with gratitude and confidence. She felt fulfillment in knowing that she could positively impact others through thoughtful action and emotional engagement. She started to see her work environment as more than a place of duty. She recognized it as a space where relationships could grow and where small gestures of kindness and understanding could create a meaningful culture. She felt motivated to contribute actively and authentically during lunch breaks. She engaged more freely in conversations. She shared stories of her experiences and listened attentively to the stories of others. She felt a growing sense of empathy and appreciation for the complexity of human lives. She understood that connection required both expression and careful attention to the feelings of others. Her dreams at night became vivid with possibilities. She imagined herself exploring new places, meeting new people, and embracing experiences with openness and courage. She woke with a sense of purpose and anticipation. She felt ready to navigate life with a heart that was softening and expanding. She reflected on the changes she had undergone. She felt warmth, curiosity, confidence, and a sense of belonging that had been absent for years. She understood that transformation was a gradual process built on small, consistent choices, and that her heart was now ready to embrace further growth. She continued her journaling practice. Noting progress in moments of challenge, she recognized that setbacks were natural and that persistence was more important than perfection. She felt empowered to face obstacles with patience and compassion for herself and others. In her personal life, she nurtured connections with friends she had previously kept at a distance. She spent time listening and sharing and allowed herself to feel joy and affection without fear. She noticed how mutual trust and openness deepened relationships and created lasting bonds. She began to experiment with expressing gratitude regularly. She thanked coworkers for assistance, friends for companionship, and even strangers for small acts of kindness. She observed how these simple gestures enriched her day and created positive ripples in her environment. Through these experiences, she realized that her heart had transformed from guarded to open. She felt capable of experiencing joy, sorrow, excitement, and empathy fully. She recognized that embracing emotions and connection brought a depth to life that rules and expectations could never provide. She understood that life was not about control, but about engagement. She felt prepared to face uncertainty with courage and curiosity, recognized that the warmth and openness she had begun to cultivate were essential to living authentically and meaningfully. Her journey was ongoing, but she felt equipped to continue. She approached each day with awareness and intention. She noticed opportunities to connect to others and to express herself fully. She realized that her life was becoming richer and more vibrant as she embraced the possibilities of an open heart. She woke up one morning with a sense of calm energy. She felt the warmth inside her that had been growing over the past weeks. She dressed carefully, but without hesitation, choosing clothes that made her feel comfortable and confident. On the way to work, she noticed the sky, the light, the movement of people, and felt connected to the rhythm of life. Work, she greeted her coworkers with ease and exchanged smiles that were genuine. She noticed that her own mood influenced the environment. She felt more present and attentive. She engaged in conversations freely and listened without judgment. She realized that openness created trust and understanding with those around her. A new colleague approached with a warm smile. They shared a moment of quiet laughter and then discussed a task. They worked together with coordination and care. She realized how natural collaboration could feel when both people respected and valued each other. She felt a deep sense of appreciation for the gentle influence they had on her life throughout the day. She noticed moments where she could act with kindness and compassion. She helped a coworker with a difficult task and offered encouragement to another. She observed how these small gestures made her feel lighter and more connected. She understood that connection required action as well as attention. During a break, she walked outside to feel the sun and breeze. She watched people passing by and noticed the variety of lives and expressions. She felt empathy for strangers and a quiet gratitude for the opportunity to witness ordinary beauty. She realized that life was richer when she allowed herself to experience it fully. She reflected on the changes she had undergone. The careful distance and cold expectations of her past had been replaced with warmth, curiosity, and engagement. She understood that change was gradual and required consistent effort. She felt proud of herself for choosing openness over fear and connection over detachment. One afternoon, she encountered a situation where a coworker was upset. She approached gently and listened without offering immediate solutions. She allowed space for emotions and offered reassurance. She noticed that simply being present without judgment could bring comfort. She felt the power of empathy and understood its importance in relationships. At home, she continued her journaling. She wrote about her feelings, experiences, and observations. She reflected on her growth and the moments that had challenged her. She did not judge herself for mistakes or hesitation. She realized that self-compassion was essential for sustaining emotional growth. Her weekends became times of exploration and connection. She visited parks, museums, and small events. She allowed herself to interact with people freely without fear of judgment. She experienced joy, curiosity, and inspiration. She felt that life was opening up with possibilities she had once thought inaccessible. She nurtured existing friendships. She shared thoughts, feelings, and experiences with friends she had kept at a distance. She discovered that honesty and openness deepened bonds and brought fulfillment. She realized that relationships were not only about support, but also about shared growth and understanding. She noticed that her family responded to her changes positively. She spoke more freely about her thoughts and choices. She observed that mutual respect and listening created understanding. She realized that communication and openness could transform relationships over time. At work, she began taking initiative in small ways. She suggested ideas, offered guidance, and helped organize tasks. She noticed that her contributions were valued not only for efficiency, but also for thoughtfulness. She felt satisfaction in knowing that her presence and input had positive effects on others during breaks. She engaged in conversations about life, dreams, and experiences. She listened attentively and shared with sincerity. She noticed the joy that came from genuine dialogue. She realized that openness and empathy could create shared understanding and meaningful interactions. She began to incorporate gratitude into daily life. She acknowledged the efforts of coworkers, friends, and strangers. She observed that expressing appreciation fostered warmth and connection. She felt that gratitude not only enriched her interactions but also nourished her inner world. She reflected on the lessons learned from her initial hesitation. She recognized that fear had been a barrier to growth and connection. She understood that embracing uncertainty with courage and curiosity created opportunities for meaningful experiences. She felt empowered by her choices and the freedom they brought her. Dreams at night reflected the emotional growth she had undergone. She imagined herself navigating life with openness, confidence, and empathy. She woke with a sense of purpose and excitement she felt ready to embrace challenges and relationships fully. She understood that life was dynamic and that growth was continuous. She engaged in creative activities that had once seemed impossible. She painted, wrote, and experimented with new hobbies. She discovered joy in the process rather than focusing on outcomes. She realized that expressing herself authentically was liberating and fulfilling. She observed that her emotional openness allowed her to connect with people from various backgrounds. She felt empathy for their struggles and joy for their successes. She understood that connection required presence, attention, and sincerity. She embraced the responsibility and reward of authentic interaction. Her days were filled with small acts of kindness, observation, and reflection. She listened deeply to others, shared her thoughts, and allowed her emotions to guide compassionate action. She noticed that her heart felt lighter and more expansive. She felt gratitude for the opportunity to experience life fully. She continued to learn about herself. She noticed old habits that lingered and gently chose new responses. She felt empowered to act with awareness and intention. She recognized that personal growth was ongoing and that each day offered chances to practice openness and compassion. Her relationships deepened. She spent time with friends, family, and colleagues, cultivating trust, empathy, and mutual understanding. She felt connected and valued. She realized that meaningful connections were built on consistent care and authenticity. Reflected on her journey from cold expectations to a changed heart, she recognized the courage it took to face fear, embrace vulnerability, and engage fully with life. She felt pride and gratitude for the growth she had achieved. She understood that life was richer when approached with openness, warmth, and genuine connection. She looked forward to the future with curiosity and hope. She felt prepared to face challenges with resilience and compassion. She recognized that her heart was now capable of experiencing a full range of emotions. Without fear, she understood that true growth required continued attention, kindness, and engagement with the world around her. In each moment she felt present, aware, and connected. She noticed the beauty in ordinary interactions, the value of empathy, and the importance of authentic engagement. She understood that it changed heart allowed her to live fully and to create meaningful connections with others. She felt ready to continue her journey, embracing life with openness, courage, and love. The morning began quietly, but with a sense of possibility. She woke with the sunlight streaming through the window, feeling calm and alert. She dressed in clothes that reflected her mood, comfortable yet lively. She paused for a moment to breathe and notice the world around her, the sounds of the city, the distant voices of neighbors, and the faint hum of life created a feeling of connection and anticipation. She left her apartment and walked through the streets, noticing the people passing. She smiled at a few strangers and received smiles in return. The warmth that had been growing within her made her feel part of the city. She felt present and aware of the small details, the flowers and planters, the way the light reflected off windows, the scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery. At work, she was greeted warmly by coworkers. She responded naturally without hesitation. She noticed how her presence influenced the mood of the office. She engaged in conversations with sincerity, offering help, listening carefully, and laughing. Without restraint, she felt a growing sense of ease and fulfillment in these interactions. The new colleague approached with a friendly smile. They discussed the tasks of the day and shared ideas freely. She noticed how their energy inspired her to think creatively and act with confidence. She felt a sense of partnership and mutual respect that encouraged her to be more open in expressing her thoughts and feelings. During a break, she walked outside to feel the sun and breeze. She watched the interactions of people around her. The elderly man helping a child with a bicycle, the friends sharing stories and laughter, the delivery worker offering a polite nod. She noticed how small acts of care created a ripple of warmth. She felt grateful for being able to observe and participate in the kindness around her. She reflected on her journey and recognized the growth that had occurred. She had moved from caution and distance to openness and engagement. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment and pride. She understood that change was gradual and required attention, patience, and willingness to embrace vulnerability. Later in the day, she encountered a challenging situation. A coworker had misunderstood instructions, leading to confusion and tension. She approached calmly, listening to concerns and offering constructive suggestions. She noticed that her ability to remain composed, empathetic, and thoughtful helped ease the situation and build trust. She felt satisfaction in knowing that her approach could positively influence outcomes. At lunchtime, she joined a group of coworkers. Sharing stories and ideas, she contributed her experiences and listened attentively. She noticed how her participation created connection and fostered a sense of community. She felt a quiet joy in being part of a collaborative and supportive environment. She began to consider her personal life. Outside work, she decided to reach out to an old friend she had lost contact with. She sent a message with simple words expressing interest in reconnecting. She felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation, but knew that openness and initiative were necessary for building meaningful connections. Afternoon brought opportunities for creativity. She worked on a project that required problem-solving and imagination. She found herself experimenting with ideas she had once considered impractical. She noticed how embracing curiosity and flexibility led to effective and innovative results. She felt excitement and pride in her growing ability to integrate creativity into her daily life. She paused briefly to reflect on her progress. She remembered times when fear and rigid expectations had limited her choices. She realized that embracing her emotions, curiosity, and empathy had opened new possibilities. She felt empowered to continue making conscious decisions that aligned with her authentic self. In the evening, she walked home, noticing the subtle beauty of the city. She greeted neighbors warmly and paused to appreciate moments of quiet around her. She felt a sense of belonging and connection to the world that had once seemed distant and impersonal. She understood that presence, attention, and kindness created meaningful engagement with life at home. She engaged in her creative practice, painting and journaling. She allowed herself to explore ideas and feelings without judgment. She noticed how these activities deepened her awareness of self and enhanced her emotional expression. She felt satisfaction in nurturing her inner life and cultivating personal growth. She reflected on her relationships. She realized that openness and empathy had strengthened bonds with coworkers, friends, and family. She understood that authentic communication built trust and fostered meaningful connections. She felt grateful for the opportunities to deepen these relationships and for the mutual care they now shared. She thought about challenges that might arise. She recognized that setbacks were part of life and that resilience came from responding with patience and understanding. She felt confident in her ability to navigate difficulties while maintaining authenticity and empathy. She understood that her changed heart equipped her to face uncertainty with courage. During the night, she dreamed vividly. She imagined herself exploring new experiences, engaging with people she admired, and expressing her thoughts and emotions freely. She woke feeling energized and hopeful. She noticed that her dreams reflected the emotional growth she had achieved and reinforced her readiness to embrace the future. She began to plan small acts of kindness for the days ahead. She considered offering assistance to a colleague, inviting a neighbor for a casual conversation, or expressing gratitude to someone who had helped her. She realized that thoughtful gestures strengthened her connections and contributed to her sense of fulfillment and purpose at work. She noticed moments where she could mentor or support others. She offered guidance to a newer employee and listened attentively to their concerns. She saw how small acts of attention and care created trust and confidence. She felt a quiet satisfaction. Knowing her actions had a positive impact on others, she explored her interests outside work with renewed energy. She attended workshops, visited cultural spaces, and engaged in social events. She allowed herself to participate fully, without hesitation. She felt joy in discovering new aspects of life and connecting with people who shared her curiosity and enthusiasm. Her evenings were spent reflecting on experiences and journaling insights. She noted moments of growth, challenge, and opportunity. She recognized patterns in her behavior and considered ways to continue developing empathy, openness, and courage. She understood that continuous reflection reinforced her personal transformation. She thought about her family and the subtle changes. In their interactions, she observed that open communication, patience, and understanding had improved relationships. She felt gratitude for their willingness to listen and respond with care. She understood that authentic engagement could transform even long-standing dynamics. She began to see her life as an evolving journey rather than a rigid path. She welcomed opportunities for learning, connection, and self-expression. She felt confident that the heart she had nurtured could navigate challenges and embrace joy. She understood that life was richer when approached with awareness, compassion, and authenticity. She engaged fully in each day, noticing small details, moments of connection, and experiences that brought satisfaction. She allowed herself to feel deeply, to express sincerely, and to act with kindness. She realized that her emotional openness had created a life that was meaningful, engaging, and fulfilling. She reflected on her journey from caution and cold expectations to a heart capable of warmth and connection. She recognized the courage it took to embrace vulnerability, curiosity, and empathy. She felt gratitude for the growth she had achieved and looked forward to the continued exploration of life with openness and purpose. Her mornings continued to begin with awareness and anticipation. She walked the streets and engaged with people with warmth and presence. She worked with colleagues creatively and empathetically. She nurtured friendships and family relationships with sincerity. She explored new interests with curiosity and joy. She understood that her heart was no longer bound by fear or rigid expectations. She felt capable of experiencing the full spectrum of emotions and responding authentically. She recognized that connection, empathy, and kindness were essential to a fulfilling life. She felt prepared to continue her journey, embracing challenges and opportunities with courage and openness. She ended each day reflecting on experiences, moments of growth, and connections nurtured. She felt pride, gratitude, and joy. She understood that the journey of personal growth and emotional openness was continuous, but rewarding. She embraced the path ahead, knowing that each day offered opportunities to live fully, connect deeply, and engage meaningfully with the world around her.